You know, the best part about being Canadian right now is that it doesn't really matter what your opinion is, because whatever you think, whatever angle you take, the internet has a mountain of evidence ready to back you up right at your fingertips. Pick a stance, any stance, and boom, instant validation. Welcome to Canada, where the national sport isn't hockey anymore. It's weaponized Google searches.
Too many completed condos sitting empty. Metro Vancouver alone, around 2,500 finished units are standing vacant with no buyers. With higher interest rates, weaker investment demand, developers are stuck. They don't want to sell at a loss. They can't afford to hold those empty units indefinitely. We will convert vacant condos into affordable housing. Condos that have been built, that are unoccupied, that are going to sit there potentially for another couple of years. We're going to go use the right financing mechanisms, convert those into affordable housing so people can move in and use that.
Well, well, well. If it isn't you again, welcome back to the Comic Reporter.
What Mark Carney and the Liberals have done is they've inflated a housing bubble with too much money printing and immigration driving up demand and too much red tape and taxes blocking supply. Having created the housing bubble and now bursting that bubble, now they want to come and bail out the bankers and developers who profited from it. And this is another example of a tiny club of liberal elites, billionaires, and insiders getting rich by making hardworking Canadians poor. So I'm calling for the Carney Condo Bailout of developers and bankers to be canceled. As for the condos themselves, you know what the solution is for them to become affordable? The developers need to lower the sale price to a level that people can afford to pay. And when they do that, those condos will sell. And some say, well, the condos, the developers will lose money. Somebody's going to lose money. So who's it going to be? Is it going to be the waitress and the welder paying for it on their taxes so Carney can give a tax-funded bailout? Or is it going to be the developers and bankers who were trying to profit off of the bubble in the first place?
June 24th, 2026, this is the Comic Reporter, and here we are again, right back in the middle of the perpetual corporate bailout era of Canadian history. It's like a seasonal event. Pumpkin spice, patio season, and paying companies who make terrible decisions to feel slightly less worse about their own incompetence. And look, I'm all for low-cost housing. I'm not a big fan of people freezing to death in tents on the streets of Vancouver, and I think we can all agree, liberal, conservative, or Elon Musk, fewer dead homeless people equals a better Canada. But here's the part everyone wants to skip. Helping people doesn't require bailing out developers who got high on their own spreadsheets. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Because what we're doing right now isn't housing policy. What we're doing right now is state-backed risk absorption. Developers overbuilt at inflated costs, interest rates exposed the mispricing, units sit empty, and instead of letting the market do what the markets do, market corrections, the government steps in like a panicked parent buying out the entire lemonade stand because little Timmy didn't sell enough to cover his college tuition. So now we're buying empty units at inflated valuations, renovating them at taxpayer expense, and calling it compassion. No, I don't buy it. This is not compassion. This is privatized gains and socialized losses. The oldest trick in the neoliberal playbook, because that's what these liberals are. They're not liberal, they're neoliberal. Let's start calling them what they actually are. And the best part, they do it with a straight face. Like this is the only possible solution, like the universe itself demanded this bailout. Cosmic, cosmic, cosmic assignment of heroship assigned to Mark Carney. So let's be clear about what Mark Carney is doing here. He's using government money to override market demand by buying up a massive amount of empty condos and apartments. Those become government-owned assets, and then they get chopped into smaller units and added to the low-income housing ledger. Sounds noble. But the mechanism is actually really simple and far less known. Developers avoid taking losses, government absorbs the risk, taxpayers inherit the maintenance, and the long-term outcome is the same thing North America always produces when the state becomes the landlord. A government-funded shithole, which means Canada should be full of rappers at some time in the next 30 years or so. We've seen this movie. We called it 8 Mile. We know the ending. It's not a twist. It's not a surprise. It's not even a reboot. It's a return. It's a rerun. See, in a normal supply and demand market, things would operate as follows. Developers would notice a hole in the market. If developers mispriced the market upon completion of the development, the units that they built would sit empty, which is what's happening right now. And then, because the units were empty, the developers would have to lower the prices or restructure the payments for those units. The independent buyers or corporations could swoop in and purchase those units at a real market value, sometimes lower than what the developers used to construct them, and the government would then step in and subsidize the rents for low-income tenants without actually owning the asset. That's it. No bailouts, no political theater, no crises necessary, no we're saving the housing market press conferences, just a functioning system where risk stays with the people who created the risk and accepted the risk when they made the building. But that's not what we're doing, because the political class has discovered something magical. Crises, useful. Crises can justify anything. And that's what brings us to the part nobody wants to touch. Crisis isn't an accident, not as far as I can tell. It's not sudden, it's not inherited, it's not the hand we were dealt. It's a manufactured inevitability, a system built on inflated demand, restricted supply, CMHC-backed risk, municipal dependence on development fees, zoning that fossilizes scarcity, immigration targets that outpace construction, and a political class that treats housing like a PR backdrop. That's when the system buckles. They say we're only playing the hand we were given. No, neoliberal government. You dealt the hand, you stacked the deck, you flipped the table. And then somehow you still managed to lose. That's not incompetence. That's willful. That way, because if we're going to manufacture a crisis, you might as well make it big enough that everyone feels it, right? That way, when you swoop in with a solution, people are so desperate they'll accept any return on investment, even if it's basically zero. And the funniest part, they pretend this all started 10 years ago, like the housing crisis is a Trudeau era invention. No, this goes back decades. The federal government exiting social housing in the 1990s. CMHC shifting from housing Canadians to protecting lenders. Municipalities turning development charges into a revenue addiction. Zoning laws written when color TV was still a novelty. A national obsession with home ownership as a retirement plan and political culture that treats real estate as a sacred cow. But nobody wants to talk about that, because going back that far requires actual work and knowledge of how we got here. Actual reform, actual accountability. And we can't have that now, can we? Canada doesn't have a housing crisis. Canada has a policy design crisis, a system that inflates demand, restricts supply, protects capital, socializes losses, and privatizes gains, and uses moral language to shield economic transfers. It's not accidental. It's not fate. It's not the hand we were dealt. It's not the hand they dealt themselves. It's the hand they dealt themselves, and We're the ones paying for it. If we actually wanted to fix this, we treat taxpayer money like investment capital, not charity. A real model would buy distressed assets at distressed prices, not bailout prices, hold them in a taxpayer housing trust, use mixed income buildings to avoid future slums, capture appreciation and cash flows for taxpayers, reinvest returns into more housing, keep risk where it belongs with the developers. That's the taxpayer equity housing model. Not a bailout, not a band-aid, not a PR stunt, a system where public money creates public wealth, not private rescue packages. So yeah, the crisis isn't an accident, it's not fate, it's not destiny, it's design. And until we stop pretending otherwise, we're going to keep paying for the same hand they keep dealing themselves. Welcome to Canada 2026, where the housing crisis is real, the solutions are fake, and the bill always lands in your mailbox. Welcome back to the land that never stops thinking. Good luck.